Okay. Oh, well, we are live.
Hey.
Woo! I'm just. Don't mind me. I am like Wikipedia-ing right here. I'll count us in. And 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to SideQuest Wrestle. Oh, I already messed it up. Welcome everybody to the SideQuesting Wrestling Podcast. This week's pay-per-view event is Cruiserweight Clash. I got actually thought of a name ahead of time, man.
You tried.
I was thinking the King of Tired Trios.
I like that, the King of Tired Trios. I am Dolly Sleepy Floormat Demovsky.
I'm John Fedopio.
Oh, I like that.
And I'm JJ Night Shift.
Oh, well done. We have a fantastic show. As usual, it's always a fantastic show. First of all, I think I'm gonna speak on behalf of John and JJ and say thank you guys for the awesome amount of feedback you've been giving us on the podcast. Like, I've been getting a ton of tweets and messages on like Facebook and Twitter and across social media, just people saying how much they love our little show, and it's only been like 3 weeks. This is the fourth episode we're doing, so we're doing something right. But thank you guys. Really appreciate all the good feedback, and it's why I know the three of us are still recording, because we're all so freaking tired. We gotta get back on this horse and continue it. So yes, very cool. I'm gonna tweet out the link one more time for people to watch. But we got a good show today. A couple big topics to talk about. We're going to talk about CM Punk in his UFC debut, which was much hyped, and the CWC Cruiserweight Classic finale, because that was a pretty cool show. So first of all, how are you guys doing? John, JJ, you guys hanging in there, getting ready for some good old fun?
Oh yeah,
totally. Luckily, we're on the back end of the wrestling cycle, so I mean, we had the Sunday's big event, and then capping off with the CWC 2-hour event. So it's been a slog.
Yes. I'm thankful that it's the week after a pod. Yeah, you're right. It's the week after a pay-per-view event, so we got a couple of our weekends back at least until the next. What's the next pay-per-view event coming in?
No Mercy, I think.
No Mercy, and that's Raw, correct?
Yeah,
correct.
It's a Raw brand.
Cool. Raw brand. So what's interesting is after last week's episode, I hopped online and started doing research on the brand splits, and the first brand split actually lasted several years, right?
Yeah.
And that the history behind that was actually pretty cool. When for those that don't know, I'm sure all of our listeners do know, but it was really interesting how they acquired WCW, and they wanted to they actually were thinking of making a Nitro show, or was it Nitro?
Standalone WCW show. Yeah.
A standalone WCW show, and that didn't quite work out, so they opted to do that draft. And
apparently, you can blame my hometown for.
Yes, that's right. It was that's right. It was the very first location that they did the live show, the one live show for WCW, and it bombed. Yeah, they hated it.
SmackDown WCW match in Tacoma.
Right, and they did matches like for the last 20 minutes of SmackDown. They converted it to WCW. So it didn't quite work out, but that led to the first draft and the brand split, which I think lasted like 6-7 years or so, somewhere on there. And then, of course, they brought them all back together, and then here we are again.
They just sort of slowly got rid of it. They didn't make a big deal out of it.
Yeah, I guess it had to do with decreasing return on the split and the thinning of the roster, I suppose.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yep. But it's so far so good. I think what's interesting right now is back then there was you had so many superstars from WCW and WWE and a lot of big names, and back then I hate to say that as if it was like 50 years ago, but it was built on superstar names and not. There wasn't as much, I guess, wrestling. I don't want to say wrestling talent, like technical wrestling talent. There was definitely some out there, but right now, this generation of wrestlers, they are fantastic wrestlers. Like the talent level of these folks, some of these younger guys especially, is pretty phenomenal when you see their skill sets and their athletic ability. So it's not just about having muscles on top of muscles and an ego, and now it's actually having that skill set, and it's why these shows, I think, are extremely watchable.
Yeah, it's surprising these days how almost every guy has some multiple level skill sets. Like everyone's doing dives, everyone is able to do some technical stuff, everyone's able to brawl and talk. So it's
Well, one thing that definitely hasn't been affected by the brand splits in the past and now is wrestlers in the UFC. That was just the worst segue. I am so sorry.
Nice try.
I tried. Well, we wanted to definitely touch on CM Punk. He's one of the bigger names to leave WWE. By the way, there have been quite a few people leaving the WWE lately, which maybe we can touch on in next week. But quite a few big names. But CM Punk is one of the latest wrestlers to head over to the UFC.
Yeah.
Right, switch. Of course, we know in the past they've done it before. I mean, Alberto Del Rio, who is he was an MMA fighter. Obviously, what's that?
Nice deep cut there. That's good.
That's deep cut. Yep. You can thank the Wikipedia being open. That's why
I was depressed until you said that, but.
Yep. But Brock Lesnar. You had was it Ken Shamrock? He was also. I remember he was the first one. I think that I recall.
Yeah, he started off in UFC, came to the WWE.
Yes.
Yeah. Bobby Lashley was another one.
Bobby Lashley.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Shamrock. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say Shamrock had a bit of a wrestling career before even UFC. Okay. Like he was trained as a wrestler, pro wrestler. And so he was on Austin's podcast one time talking about it, and he spent a bit of time in Japan and stuff doing some wrestling. Then got really famous in UFC, and then as you say, made the switch to WWF at the time.
And there have been folks from around the world, I guess, that have been there. I mean, you have like Naoya Ogawa, I think. I'm looking at some of these names, and so it's Minoru Suzuki. I've known of Minoru Suzuki, so there's a history. There's definitely a history. And
you're likely to see that in Japan in particular.
Yes, exactly, and I think that's where I think part of the reason is because the style of wrestling is different than it is here in the U.S. But I want to touch on the point that so CM Punk was extremely hyped up when he left WWE and went to UFC. I don't believe how many people were talking about it at the same time, saying I heard a lot of people saying he was going to do great, he's going to do awesome, because he was a really great wrestler, really huge fan favorite in WWE. And he kind of disappeared. Let's see, when did he head over? It was, was it a year ago?
2 years.
2 years, yeah, and he's been training for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then his first.
Setback, but
what's that?
He had the setback with he had to have surgery at one point.
Yep. Yeah. He had to have surgery, but he's essentially been in the mix with UFC for almost a couple years now, and his debut was this weekend. I remember thinking, I'm like, oh, he hasn't fought yet. For some reason, I thought that he had been, he had fought, but no, he hadn't.
It feels like it.
It really feels like it, and so I was one of the folks that thought he might do okay. Only because
potential. Of he's athletic, he took it seriously enough, but
and that's what led me to think so, but that didn't happen, did it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's to be expected. He's never done it before. You don't just jump in amateur straight into big league. UFC was already looking at Mickey Gall. I mean, it was a guy that they knew they were going to bring in at some point.
Well, I mean, you got UFC full of career MMA fighters. They're born and bred, right from the start to do that thing, no matter what their background was, whether it's wrestling, like amateur wrestling or jiu-jitsu or what have you. I mean, these guys they're ready to compete at the highest of levels, especially in the UFC on pay-per-view. Like those guys are, they should be ready to go. Sure. And I give credit to Punk for trying hard, and I have no doubt that the man worked his butt off. Like no doubt at all. He's one of the most driven people I could think of, but it's just the deep end is just too deep.
Yeah, he needed to be like, even Brock Lesnar fought, in Japan a couple of times before he made the jump to UFC. Like he needed to have some other fights before making the big time, I think, like to really, even if you win, lose, or draw, like, cut your teeth a little bit before you're damn near co-main event of a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean, he was third match from the top, right?
Yeah. But like, he was like way more advertised than the actual co-main event. Like,
yeah, it's true.
One thing I found really
and he made like $500,000 just on fight money.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly. And Mickey made like 30,000 or something.
So one thing I felt, first of all, he actually had a really cool speech to the fans afterwards when he kind of got in the air. I don't know if you guys heard that, but
I did.
He said at least he tried. At least he was able to try it. He was thankful for trying it. He wouldn't not try because he knows he lost. So, but I think that was actually pretty cool and pretty honest. And you don't hear a lot of I don't hear a lot of fighters say things like that, after a match. But I think that's probably because it was his first big real event. So that was pretty interesting. But you brought up a good point, John, in that you said the deep end is really deep in this, and it was. I'm gonna take a step back and say a lot of people I know, especially a lot of people say I can be in the UFC, I can fight, I'm fine, I've been in barroom brawls, I can do it. This proves that even if you have tons of wrestling talent, holds, hits, punches, kicks, moves, how to get away from opponents, how to cover opponents, and you train for a couple of years just on this hard stuff, you will not believe how extremely difficult it is. And that transition, no matter how prepared you are for WWE or other types of wrestling, other types of events, UFC is it's a completely different monster.
Yeah. I mean, CM Punk, realistically has only been training 2 years to fight in an MMA fight. I know he'd been doing, like, jiu-jitsu training and stuff before that, but never really training to fight. But Mickey Gall's been training to fight probably most of his adult life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're basically fighting a pro out the gate, because even though he's only had 2 professional fights, that's what he's always been doing. That was always his goal. It wasn't CM Punk's original goal in life to be a mixed martial artist.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's just that transition in mindset, like with Brock and Lashley and Shamrock. They have that mindset of going in and taking the guy down and considering all the variables that are, rather than being something you can plan out beforehand. You have to be able to jump on the fly and be able to react. You're trained. That's ingrained in your mind when you're in any of those kinds of sports, and how you point those skills toward a combat sport like MMA. It's really a different mindset. My best analogy that I have, because I've been almost everyone who I know has been asking me what I think about it, right? Because they know I'm a big wrestling fan. Oh, CM Punk didn't do very good, did he? My best analogy as a response is kind of like if MMA is ice hockey and pro wrestling is kind of like figure skating. Figure skating is very athletic, very precise, and can be very dangerous if it's not done properly. But it also has that artistic element to it that you have to perform for a set of judges, the fans, and keep them engaged and this is a whole different level of stuff, right? Ice hockey, you're bred to beat the other guy. You one-on-one, face-to-face, strategy against strategy, and take them down one-on-one. It's all done on ice, but it's two very different things.
I gotta say, I have seen some pretty messed up figure skating accidents, so that can get really dangerous.
so then the second part of that is like, could an ice hockey player be a good figure skater? Maybe. Could some figure skaters be good hockey players? Maybe, but certainly not everybody.
Right. I mean, even look at Brock Lesnar. Even though he won in the UFC recently, he's only 5-3. His record, and so even he, who's this monster of a human being, isn't well above the amazing record there. So there's
no him. CM Punk losing is absolutely no indication of sort of what kind of career he could potentially have. Like
exactly.
You lose in MMA. Some of the best lose. Like that's just how it works. It's like any sport. Just because you're not the underdog going in doesn't mean it's an automatic victory, or loss or whatever.
If anything, this helps him because now he's prepared. I'm sure he's done mock fights, he's done practice fights, some exhibition stuff, but this probably was the best training that he could have had, was to actually fight in front of millions of people who are watching online and in this in the arena and stuff. So this was probably his best training was that night.
It's a good experience.
Brock Lesnar lost his first UFC fight, and then two fights later was heavyweight champion.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything's possible. He just, as long as he's truly as committed as it seems he to be, then he could very well become a.
So do you guys see this happening more often with the WWE? I mean, it has been happening quite often recently, but is this a continuing trend?
I don't think so. A lot of these guys are already kind of too old to be getting in the MMA at this stage in their lives. Because I know there's been a few guys that wanted to get in the MMA at various points in their career. Like Jack Swagger wanted to be a mixed martial artist. But I mean, because he's an amateur wrestler too, and that's a good jump to make from amateur wrestling to MMA. But I think maybe some of the younger guys who are trying to cut their teeth in WWE might. But
like a Chad Gable or something who has that wrestling experience. Maybe, but it's a little it's different.
I don't see it being any sort of trend. It's the people that want to do it or will either have done it already or
So
I'm sure Kurt Angle would love nothing more than to actually have an MMA fight.
Sure.
Yeah.
What I find kind of interesting is the crossover of fans. I gotta think that there is some crossover of MMA and WWE fans, just like there is a crossover, something in between MMA and boxing, right? So there's some crossover. Boxing's completely it's its own third monster, and there have been wrestlers that have gone into boxing as well. I mean, we all know about Thunder Lips, right?
That was an exhibition fight. That was
an exhibition fight. But no, so what I think is interesting is one thing is this holds true is it does show the incredible athleticism that people that get into wrestling have, and a lot of them have some pretty good determination and dedication to their sport and their trend. So to see that maybe MMA is just one of potential outlets. It may not be the only one. It may not be like the there may not be this big giant trend, but I could see wrestlers and MMA and boxing and other individual sports like that, combat sport, things like that. There could be some crossover there in a weird way. Obviously, we've had celebrities. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on some of just the worst celebrities.
Oh, boy, you can really go deep with the celebrities.
Karl Malone, I think was. Oh, God. And that's a whole different monster. I mean, we're not even talking about him.
I can see a lot more MMA guys making the jump into wrestling.
Yes.
That seems
more that way than
You've got a lot of guys that have already sort of voiced interest and.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Ronda Rousey sort of teasing that constantly. She was at WrestleMania recently, like did a thing there, and
Mm-hmm.
and you've got guys like oh, now I'm terrible with names. I'll just forget huge names all of a sudden, but yeah, you'll get guys that are interested, and
Yeah.
you hear them talk about it, like, and there's some guys that kind of treat MMA like professional wrestling already, like they have a character, and they're intentionally trying to irritate the fans or whatever, and make you want to watch them get punched in the face on a pay-per-view, just like any good professional wrestling heel would want you to do.
Yeah, talking about Jim Cornette again, Cornette always says MMA does wrestling better than wrestling does these days. Selling about and building up excitement and creating a story within a fight. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to touchy the fighting it's on the more athletic side of WWE with the Cruiserweight Classic, which just completed the first season. I don't know if they're gonna be big seasons or just yearly tournaments. I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but
I mean, I guess it being on the network, whatever they want, whenever.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But the Cruiserweight Classic had just completed, and the winner, TJ Perkins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was. I ended up watching this a little bit last night live. I know I love the ping on Twitter that you sent me. Time to watch your homework, boys. So I was appreciated because I'd forgotten that it was on. And then. No, so I watched a little bit yesterday, and then I watched the completion of it today throughout my day. But God, that was so good. All right away. TJ Perkins, Grand Metalik. It was called it's the Cruiserweight Classic. It really was. The two semifinal matches and the final really were classic wrestling matches. They were so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the kind of wrestling show that you talk about for a while. Like, it's gonna be one of those things that you go back to in the future, especially when things start going bad again in wrestling. Because inevitably, especially on Raw, the cruiserweights are gonna start taking a back seat to the main show, and you're gonna start saying, "But man, that Cruiserweight Classic, like, didn't they learn anything?" Like,
I love. Sorry, John, to cut you off. I love these types of tournaments. Even if it's like a 4-man tournament, like we just had a couple weeks ago for the WWE Championship, or the way the King of the Ring used to be way back in the day.
Yeah.
I love these types of tournaments, and have this 32-man wrestling event that every week we'd watch, a couple matches, and it whittled down to 16 to, to 8 to 4 to 2 and finally 1. I thought it was a ton of fun. It was a lot of fun. It really engaged the fans.
It was absolutely the perfect way to really bring that part of wrestling back into the WWE. Something that's missing for a very, very long time.
Yeah, they really have to be commended on the way that they booked it and then executed it to make it, very digestible over the course of, many, many weeks, and keep you engaged without any real feuds or storylines as such. As far as an experiment goes for the network, I think it's the best thing they've done on the network since NXT evolved and became what it's become.
Yeah, absolutely.
They managed to take cruiserweight wrestling in general often is pretty light on story and light on feuds. You have competitive matchups, but it's not so much unless you're talking about an Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, or something like that. It often becomes just high flying moves and matches and not a lot of substance. But so somehow they managed to take the stuff in this tournament and turn Brian Kendrick being the biggest example of that in the tournament in terms of his story and how he wrestled and how his desperation and all that great stuff that's been going on. It could have been so light on story and just be matches, but it wasn't. People were crying almost every other episode because of the emotion, and I felt it was genuine.
Yeah, I believe so too. There was a ton of respect between the people in the ring. You would see folks hugging afterwards. Everybody seemed to be proud of each other. And as fans, I think all of us ate it up. But it was real. it was wrestling, but it was real. I mean, it was the most, I guess, maybe the most real you can get in this situation. But it was, there was definitely emotion in there. They were putting their heart into these performances because a lot of these folks who knows if they'll get bigger shots like this again, right? So
exactly. The meta story is that this is not unlike the women's revolution. This is the chance for guys who are smaller to actually make the big money and big opportunities in WWE, where I mean, you've had some of that already with CM Punk being a smaller guy and a couple other people, and Daniel Bryan especially, of course. But this is the chance for guys on the indies today who are not big McLarge huges that they can get a spot.
Yeah,
it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
To see, we know who the roster is, but you wonder if maybe some guys that are currently in the WWE will kind of want to make that shift into, because there's a couple of guys that should probably be in that division.
Yes.
And would probably excel. Don't try to go after the Intercontinental Championship or the United States Championship. You're gonna get more respect and more airtime if you switch. Neville.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. If only on an introductory level, so that people can get used, the general mass audience could get used to all these new faces.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys in there that nobody has, unless you've been watching it week in and week out. There's a lot of guys in there that are just they will look like the enhancement talent that's been fighting in the last few weeks. So you got to start. Yeah, it would be a good way to have a couple of big names that we are familiar with. Fighting these guys.
Like you say, a lot of these guys are no bigger than our favorite Mr. Ellsworth. Not a whole lot bigger than that guy, and but these guys have so much talent. It's great.
Oh God, it was so fun to watch. I mean, the finale. A finale on a submission hold was awesome. You don't see that. You don't see that kind of stuff. And what I loved about this was that there wasn't you didn't have the disqualifications. You didn't have people running in all the time and throwing matches off. You didn't have a lot of cheap moves and stuff like that. It was pure wrestling. It really was pure wrestling moves.
If this were Monday Night Raw, the finale would have ended with somebody coming out and setting up a three-way for the Cruiserweight Championship next week or something, a no contest match or something. But it's it was a real wrestling match with a real finish. And,
Well, that goes with the whole presentation of the show. The whole thing is presented as real, as legit as they could.
It's a great sort of suspension that they created with that, because we know it's professional wrestling. We know that they knew well in advance who was going to wind up winning this tournament, but it never really felt that way. It really felt like it could have been anyone at any time, and it sort of seemed that way. Guys that were that you expected to go all the way didn't. And they really did a good job at sort of presenting it as if it was a legitimate tournament.
Yeah, I mean, even if there are a lot of people on the indies, say, or in Japan, who would definitely be able to fill out some of those, that first round. There were a few guys who weren't ready for prime time, but still, it added to the credence of it's an international tournament. Not every country has guys that are as good as some of the dudes in ROH.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second. I gotta not take this phone call.
No problem. So, what are some of the different fighters that you guys liked or followed within this tournament? I know I had a couple of personal favorites, so I'm curious what yours were.
You go ahead, JJ.
I didn't really I was disappointed to find out that Zack Sabre isn't going to be part of the cruiserweight thing, because he was sort of the guy I was really watching in there, and Ibushi and the two that I was really super into were the two that.
I too was big into Ibushi. I think we talked about it on a previous set. That was my first. The first match that I watched in the tournament was an Ibushi match.
I was really glad to see T.J. Perkins went the distance in that one. I think that was a really smart choice. He really sort of felt like an underdog winner of that whole thing.
He did.
We knew who he was, but there were several bigger names and like guys that would carry that division on their backs if they handed it to them or whatever. But like that was a smart choice. I think he really built a star.
Yeah, I think Perkins is really good. I think he's very smooth and very slick, and probably he took me off guard. I've heard the name, but I've never seen him work, and you can just tell by his body language and how he moves around and transition moves. He's really slick. Like he's not as what do they call it, magical as Jack Sabre transitioning things, but he's definitely a terrific worker and. And that knee bar, like
knee bar was great.
He must have busted out 4 different variations on that knee bar during the tournament just to like tamping it up just to beat that next tier guy. You know, like when he turned it into that move on Ibushi where he grabbed him by the face and pulled him back. Like that. You know, he had to beat Ibushi. Like, Ibushi is the best. I think he's probably the best guy in the world. Best. But
and now it's another part of that names. It's like I know exactly who he is. I really like him, but the name's not coming to me. The gentleman
Gallagher.
Yeah. I'm excited.
He was terrific.
I really like him.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
I'm really excited for him to be on Raw. Like that's I'm looking forward to that. Like I don't like. He's also one of those guys. Like I'm glad that WWE didn't get him sooner because he'd be like stuck with the Vaudevillains or something.
I hope they keep him away from them. Yeah, for me, Gallagher and I was familiar with about 40% of the names on this, and probably only watched 20.
I think maybe 10% of the names for me.
Yeah, and I probably only watched 20% of them.
Like when reading like results or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here's some British wrestling show that I've never watched or whatever.
And a couple of these guys have shown up in like Chikara, and I just happen to see them on different events that I've watched. But Gallagher, I liked Tozawa. I liked TJ, of course. Drew Gulak really surprised me. He's got an awesome mean streak that I like. He was on NXT this week actually, and he.
Oh really? Okay.
Oh yeah, he got into a real slapping match with Hideo Itami. Boy, oh boy, it was. It wasn't his best match I've ever seen him work, but it was a pretty good introduction to make Itami look good.
Yeah.
It was an excellent overall. I think it was just a fantastic tournament, and of course you had Triple H come out at the end. They made this finale episode really. I don't want to say a spectacle, but they made an event out of it. They had a lot of the superstars were there in attendance. There were a lot of a lot of folks. I mean, everybody was cheering. I mean, I love when I usually hear you suck or whatever. I love when I hear in WWE crowds when they start cheering, this is awesome, and that's such a cool thing. You're like, oh, the crowd is really into it.
Oh yeah.
And that hypes me up at home as a viewer of it online. I'm like, well, if they're screaming this is awesome, I gotta I gotta pause whatever I'm working on over here and pick it up. I usually have it like on a separate window off to the side or on another screen. So. But I think overall they did a really nice job with the whole presentation aspect of it.
I really like the look of that title, by the way.
Yes, so do I.
Really,
yeah.
It actually looks like a wrestling title belt, like an actual title belt, like something you would get in boxing or something like that.
Yes.
Like, not like, most of the other WWE titles just kind of look marketable. Like, that's sort of there. Like, it's easy to sell something that looks that way. Like, looks like a giant ring that you would wear or something like that.
It's very much a toy. Make it into a toy.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it was done well. It was paced well. Great workers. It
was nice to be able to see guys again that I haven't seen. Like Kendrick or Tajiri. Like that was.
I was a little fuzzy on what Perkins gets with this win, and I actually have a couple questions beyond that. So he joins Raw's roster. Is that the?
He is officially he's on the Cruiserweight division, and he is the champion.
And he is the champ. That's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Prior to this finale, the only prize was the trophy. and Triple H there when he pulled it out of the bag and here's the belt. That was the first time they indicated that there would be a champion crown at the tournament.
This is an actual belt that they're going to be. Yeah, good.
Yeah. And that officially kicks off on Monday.
Cool. Yeah. I'll totally be watching that. I'll totally be watching that. So here's my second question related to this whole thing. When they're setting up these matches, setting up this whole tournament, how far in advance do you think that they prepare the outcomes and get to know a lot of these things with the wrestlers? I mean, I don't think they knew at the very beginning that T.J. Perkins would be the guy.
I mean, it's knowing professional wrestling. It's probably not. It's probably pretty well thought out, but the details change as time goes by. Yeah, sure. T.J. Perkins probably wasn't the original winner, but they as the tournament went on and they saw what kind of contracts they were, working up with some of these guys and stuff. Things probably changed. It's professional wrestling. It changes. You find out that the crowd really gets behind this guy. So,
the online reports didn't really indicate that they had assigned anybody officially at all when the tournament started, and these contracts were being handed out during the course of the tournament. So, I mean, I kind of wish I didn't already know that Atami and Sabre hadn't signed a contract yet, and I was hoping that I was getting a little bit worked to think that. But that being said, I would say that they were hoping. I have to imagine they were hoping that Ibushi would sign. Yeah.
They're really WWE's really trying to push themselves into other markets. You just got the Chinese wrestler that just made his debut, and they're really pushing hard. Several Japanese wrestlers, like that Asian market really is something they're And so I'm 100% sure when they got Ibushi in there, they're like, "Oof, this is another guy that's gonna get Japanese eyes on our product too." Like,
well, I mean, it's the third tier of the Nakamura, Ibushi, and oh my God, the women's champion.
Asuka.
Help me. Asuka. Like, I mean, that would have been a pretty good, 1-2-3 punch.
I mean, like, you can't.
Oh, and Atami, of course, yeah, of course.
So, I mean, that's several high-profile Japanese professional wrestlers.
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, super high profile. Like, so I'm sure at the start he probably would have been one of their first picks to try to hammer out a contract with. Like,
had to be.
Yeah.
I think in the end it was a great choice with Perkins.
Yes.
Oh yes. And Perkins has a built-in story to him, like right off the bat. Like when they were introducing his character at the beginning of the tournament, they went to his story of being homeless for a period in his life, losing. I think it was he who lost both his parents and was wrestling that. Well, there was two guys who kind of came back from the brink thanks to wrestling, and Perkins was one of them anyway.
Yeah.
And so when they bring him on to Raw and they show the little highlight package about who he is, that's an easy story to tell.
That's gonna be cool. That'll be cool. Yeah.
That has to be a good chunk of what, between every commercial break, there'll be some sort of introductory package for the Cruiserweight division, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a lot of people you're just going to all of a sudden introduce with absolutely zero history or backstory to the main product.
That's right.
So they've already been doing the little packages every week showing who's going to be on the roster, but I feel like now it's time to start showing the characters.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It's one thing to show who these people are and who what they've been doing in the tournament, but it's another thing to sort of explain exactly who they are.
So what's next? What do you guys think is next for the season? I mean, do you think they'll have another classic soon, or?
I think they're going to play with the formula.
Okay.
It probably won't be another cruiserweight thing. It'll be probably something similar. I could there's a lot of now that this tournament sort of proved that it's sort of like the rules don't matter. A couple years ago, you never would have thought that these people who have absolutely nothing to do with the WWE, several of them still had contracts with other, were working dates for other promotions and stuff. But now that sort of the gloves are off, it could be anything now. You could do a tag team tournament.
Sure.
There's a women's tournament. There's plenty of women wrestlers that, you know, and the divisions on both sides are sort of lacking anyways. So you've only got a handful on each brand, especially after you split it up. So
on NXT, they've been doing that Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic.
Oh, yeah.
That could transition into a weekly show rather than squeezing it out on NXT.
Yeah, with tag teams that, you know, you don't have to be a WWE performer to be in it like it had been. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed this format, and I'm hopeful that whether it's like a tournament for a title or it's something.
But they'll just steal the King of Trios concept.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'm hoping, you know, maybe the King of the Ring could be on, you know, the old format King of the Ring could be something similar to this. I don't know, but
good.
The King of the Ring's weird these days because it's one of those things like you forget about it existed, and then like every 2 years or so they're like, it's a King of the Ring tournament starting tonight. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sure.
Listener Brian Parsons at B_Parsons007 says Perkins got a medal, belt, and a trophy. So I bet he did get that medal as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the finalist, finalist medal.
Yep. Very cool. Very cool. That's that may be worth more than an Olympic medal to many people out there these days. But yeah, overall, a tremendous tournament and very cool to see the semifinals and the finals in the same night, the same broadcast, because that just shows you how tired these guys are after.
Boy.
God, they got to be so worn out after those first matches.
Just one cruiserweight match, they just kind of think you know, is exhausting even as a watcher of it. Like
I do have to say one thing I loved about the Cruiserweight Classic is it brought so many new wrestling moves and holds and attacks into my vocabulary that I would like sit down and like write down like, oh, there's the there's what was the one? It was the the knee bar was what I'd never heard that before, the knee bar hold. And then there was a couple others that I think there was the tag team match that was in between the semifinals and the finale had there was like the dual kick to knock that guy out. I'm like, oh my god, that's awesome, and I totally forget what it was called. But either way, you know, there's a lot of cool moves, a lot of cool athleticism is fantastic. I love coming at this as like still kind of a noob to this because you guys are like, yeah, we know they're not called moves, Dolly. They're not like finishing moves like in Street Fighter. But that's how I've been related to this. But I think that's a the vocabulary has helped me. It was just really cool to see all these different things that you don't see on a Monday Night Raw or a SmackDown or a pay-per-view. These guys they're wrestling differently, and it's super appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Well, I kept saying it was going to be a really short episode. Let's do a 20-minute episode, guys. It's been 45. Again, every time we say we're going to do a short episode, it's like 50% more we tag on top of it.
And we only really talked about 2 things.
Yeah, we only talked about 2 things. Didn't even touch on the rest of the stuff, like the rest of the pay-per-views and everything. But we, again, thank you guys for joining me, JJ and John, and loyal listeners and viewers. Thank you guys so much. SQW is what we're going to be it'll be on iTunes here shortly. I'm posting it to SoundCloud this week. I've been swamped at the full-time job, and so trying to get some stuff coordinated. But I promise it will be up by the end of this weekend. We will have a listing at least on SoundCloud and places where you can download the audio portion of the podcast, and we're going to be naming each episode as if it was its own pay-per-view or Monday night event. I think that could be a lot of fun. Oh, hey guy, you can tell your friends. Anybody watch Backsplash the other day? Listen to Backsplash. Anybody listen to like Chicken Wing Thunder? Anybody see that? That was amazing. So maybe we'll have people that like sit down and grab popcorn and watch the monthly SQW pay-per-view event. We have some cool ideas. We were discussing them before this episode that we're hopefully going to get to get in front of folks here. We've had 4 episodes, 5 weeks worth. I think we took 1 week off due to some holidays and stuff, but it's been a lot of fun. Thank you everybody for joining us again this week. Hopefully the momentum stays going here because there's so much awesomeness right now to wrestling, and I have you two fine gentlemen to thank for introducing me every week to some of these. speaking for the person that doesn't watch wrestling but is slowly getting back into it and is fully impressed with what he's seeing. So you guys are mentoring me.
It's a lot of fun, though.
Yes, definitely. So again, you can find us at SideQuesting on the Twitters, SideQuesting.com. Find me personally at Dolly Demonsky. John, where can they find you?
At John Kehoe, JONKEHOE.
And JJ, where can they find you?
At the double J _ after the and double.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we will see you all on next week's episode. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
See ya.